there, my stamping friends. It's Jackie Bolhuis from Klompen Stampers. Are you ready to learn everything you need to know about the different kinds of stamps? Now, this video is a little bit different. I'm actually not going to make a card. But what I realized is there's so many little tips that I share along the way in my regular card making videos about the different types of stamps and tips for using them that it's hard to pick them all up. And to be honest, I forget about a lot of them. So I decided to do, it's going to be kind of a series over the next probably 6 to 8 weeks. And we're going to break down kind of all the parts and pieces that go along with card making and really dig deep into each thing at a time. None of the videos are going to be very long, but they're going to be jam-packed full of tips and how-tos to make card making easy for you. Now, if you're a brand new card maker, a beginner to stamping, these videos, this series is going to be perfect for you. It'll teach you everything you need to know to get started and be successful. However, if you've been making cards for a long time like I am, my goal is that you still learn something and you pick up some tips. You know, me personally, it seems like the longer I stamp, the more I forget about some things. So I think it'll be a good refresher for everybody if this seems like it's information that you may know already. So like I said, today we're diving into the different kinds of stamps and some tips for using them and different ways to using them, a few different hacks that you can do with your stamps. And then my next video, I'm actually going to break from the series. So we get one in and we're going to switch because it will be time for my YouTube Live. Now for that one, I'll have a fun card making project for you. So make sure you don't miss that. And then after that, we're going to pick back up and dig into the different types of inks and how to cut and layer cardstock. And I've got a list this long of all the different things I want to share with you and teach you. So I hope you do follow me all the way through this series. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss one, and share and let me know what you think of my I don't know what we should call this, because it's not really a beginner's series. It's great for beginners, but it's also going to be tips for all the different parts of card making. So without further ado, let's go ahead, flip the camera down, and let's talk about stamps. So I figured stamps was really the most logical place to start because that's what we're doing. We're stamping. So we're going to dive into these. Now, you'll notice with Stampin' Up! Stamps, there's two different kinds you'll see in the catalog. Some are called photopolymer, and well, actually, yeah, photopolymer, and then other ones are called cling. I thought I had one of each here, so I was confused for a second. These are both photopolymer. Now, when you get these stamps and you open them up, you'll notice they are the clear ones. Photopolymer is clear. And they kind of change the way they package these, and I love it. You'll see they come on two different pieces of plastic, so you can peel these off. One is heavier, one's a little bit lighter, so you can peel that off. And then you can take all of these stamps right off of this plastic and stick it into the case. This makes it super easy for when you are working with the stamps to just see what you got, pull them up and use them. It's also great for when you go to put your stamps away. It's a great little double check that you have everything. I'll tell you, it's really easy to lose these stamps. So be really careful. Try to get in the habit of always putting them into the case as you use them. Another little tip with that, be careful about like just setting them on your work surface. Sometimes, especially if you have a lot of stuff on here, you'll lose them, or they'll actually stick to a block and then you'll put your block away and you won't even know it. I've even had them stick to like the bottom of an ink pad. And I put my pad down, I'm cleaning up, I put it away and I can't find it. So if you can't find all the ones in the case, dig a little deep to find them. Now, a couple of tips with these. Let's bring in our little pad here, and you will notice how stained these are. This is a very well-loved stamp set of mine. It's not very old even, but when you use these, especially with red inks, your reds and your purples, your real dark inks, these are clean, but that ink really truly stains them. But as long as you've cleaned them, and we're going to talk about cleaning here in just a minute, you can be assured that you're going to get a clean image with them. So just know If they're stained, that means they're well loved. Now, when they're also well loved and used a lot, I have found that they start to lose some of their stick. And that's really because, you know, I'm touching them, they're getting oil from my hands, they're getting dust from the air, they're getting lint, they get all kinds of just kind of crud on that sticky stuff. So if you ever find that these are not sticking good to your blocks anymore, this is your magic little cure. The alcohol prep pads, buy these in a box from like Walmart. They're super cheap and you get a ton in a box. And when you pull these out, let's see, you can't get it open here. There we go. You can use this to clean off the back side of your stamps. Well, actually, you can clean the front too. But when you clean it, that kind of picks up. And I don't know if you can see that. Look at all the crud that I'm getting on there. And now you're going to have to let it dry, but that will help bring the stick back. I also like to use these to clean my blocks, and I'll clean actually the whole block with them. Blocks get pretty cruddy after a while, and kind of the same thing. We're touching them, we have our hands on them, they get ink on them, but you know, if these aren't sticking very well, if you clean your blocks, you clean your stamps, and they're going to stick really good for you. So that's my tip for making these sticky again. Okay, those are photopolymer. Now, as long as we're talking these, I want to show you a little tip for lining them up. This is always kind of the age-old question. How do I get them straight on my block so I can stamp straight on my paper? What I like to do is use my grid paper, and I will take my stamp and I will line it up on some lines. So you can, and this really just works mainly with greetings, but I can see through there, so I can see it's following the grid lines. And then when I take my block to press it down to pick it up, I'll take an edge of the block, the top, bottom side, whatever, and I will line that up with the grid lines as well. And so now I know I'm nice and straight on here. So when I go to stamp it, I can line my block up along the edge of my cardstock or whatever, but it's straight on the block, line up the block, and we should be straight. So that's a little tip for, especially with these kind of stamps, for stamping them nice and straight. Okay, let's set these aside. Next, let's talk about cling stamps. And it'll say on the case here, cling stamp set, and that's what it says in the catalog as well. And those are the red rubber stamps. The reason they call them cling is because the sheet of stickers that comes with them, or labels. I guess they're not really stickers, but these are a cling adhesive. Now, if you follow me or you watch a lot of my videos, you'll notice that I don't always put these on. Actually, I don't put them on very often. Just a personal preference. The stamps work great without them. They work great with them. So it is entirely up to you whether you put the stickers on or not. But I want to show you how to do that, because again, that's a real common question. So what you're going to want to do, you'll notice here, and I don't know if you can see that, each one of these has a cut in the middle of it, so you can peel off both sides. Now these are super, super sticky. There is no leeway. You can't stick this down and think, oh, it's a little crooked, pick it up, peel it off. It's not going to work that way. When it's down, it's down. So what I like to do is just leave this setting down here on the counter, and I'm going to take my stamp and I'm just going to follow the curves. So I'm going to start over here and I'm going to just lay that part down and then kind of come down around to the left here and the bottom and just place it right in there. The stamp itself will fit exactly where you peeled that off. And then you can peel that off and voila, you have your sticker on there. Now, these cling stickers are super, super, super sticky, okay? Which is awesome, but also presents a couple problems sometimes. When you put them on your block and you stamp with them, sometimes they're a little hard to get off. So I recommend when you're stamping, make sure you peel them all off when you're kind of done with that project. I mean, you don't have to do it instantly, but shortly after, because if you leave this sit overnight, it's going to be a little bugger to get off tomorrow. But when you go to peel them off also, you want to go from an edge and kind of get yourself underneath there to make sure you're getting that label at the same time. Because sometimes if you grab just the red rubber and you yank really hard, you could rip that stamp. Now, if you feel it's a little bit too sticky, and I've got short sleeves on here, but if I had long sleeves or on my jeans even, take this and dab it. Dab it on your jeans, dab it on your shirt a little bit and get some of that some of the sticky off of it, then it'll be a little bit easier to come off if you have issues with that. Now, if these start losing their stick, you can clean those as well with those alcohol pads, but that's the stickers are super nice on those if you're one that likes labels. Now, the other thing is I leave the part, like I'll punch these out. You can see I've used the set already, and I do leave the outline piece, I guess it's called, in my case, because then I know, again, that I have all my stamps. So I can take them out, put them back in there, and know that I'm not missing anything. Now, before we move on to the next tips, I'm gonna bring this set in for just a second. This is a cling mount as well. And I just kind of grabbed this one as an example. On your red rubber stamps, when you've got a really big, bold surface, this one happens to have a few lines in them, but it's pretty bold. So when you go to ink this up, you've got a lot of surface for that ink to stick to. Sometimes when they're brand new, you'll notice your ink doesn't want to stick real good. It maybe beads up a little bit or just isn't taking it good. What you want to do, first off, clean the stamp. And second, I'll take like a nail file, an emery board, and I have an old one sitting down here someplace, and I actually rough it up, like sand the top of it, even a real smooth sandpaper or a little sanding block. You're not going to hurt it, but if you rough it up and then clean it good, that will help take the ink better. So that's kind of a tip for those bold stamps, because that's a little bit of a common problem sometimes. Now let's talk about the old style of stamps. Now, unfortunately, I actually don't even have any of the old ones anymore, but prior to them being called cling stamps, they were called clear mount. Everything appeared the same. The cases looked the same. You basically thought it was the same as this. The problem was the labels they used on those, they were not cling, okay? That's just kind of what they call this kind of a label. And they stuck to the stamp really good, but they did not stick to your block very good. I heard all the time, and that's when I really got in the habit of never putting them on my stamps. But you would take them and, let's just make believe here, and you'd put them on there and you'd go to ink it up and it would like fall. It just would not stick. So that's why they changed to this cling, which is great. If you've got some of those old stamps yet, Stampin' Up! Sells, they're just cling mount sheets, and it comes in a sheet like this. It peels off. I don't know if you can see, it's actually, I don't know the size, 3/4 of an inch. That's the size of it. And you can take these and you can add it right on top of the labels on those older stamps to make them stickier. This is the same type of label that I just showed you, what they use now. So you would do the same thing. You would want to, peel off the two sides that split down the middle, and then stick your stamp on there. Oh, and you can see how sticky it is. So that goes onto the stamp. This part's what's going to stick onto your block. And then if this is too big, you can trim it down to the size you need. You don't have to cover the whole label. We'll just crumple this one up. Even, just a half a piece of this or a quarter piece of this on the label, you won't see it, but it will just make those stick a little bit better. So if you've got the older style labels and they're not sticking, this is your little solution on that. So we kind of talked about blocks a little bit. Stampin' Up! Has beautiful blocks. They are nice and solid and have nice smooth grooves in them. They're awesome for stamping. When you're first starting, I recommend that you get the bundle so you have one of each size. Otherwise, you can start with just a few of the basics. Now, with these, when you look at the Stampin' Up! Catalog, every single stamp set that's listed in there, it will tell you the recommended block size. So if you're not sure what you need and whether you have it, that's just a good little resource. And then all the blocks are actually labeled. This one is H, boy, is that dirty too, and a D. So just a little bit about blocks. Don't forget, you need blocks. All of Stampin' Up! Stamps come without blocks. So the nice thing about these, once you buy them, you just put your stamps on, use them, take them off, and you can use them and use them and use them. So those are our blocks that go with all of our stamps. Now, as long as we're talking about stamps and the red rubber ones, have you ever used a stamp and you catch one of those nasty little edges? And by that, I mean you ink this up and then you stamp it, and this part right here, an edge someplace might have some ink on it, and then that gets on your cardstock as well. It's like so frustrating. If that happens, I think some stamps have more of a kind of a border around them than others. You can always take a scissors, This is an old craft scissors. Stampin' Up! Used to sell these. They don't anymore. But just designate a scissors. You can see it's kind of goopy. And you can actually go around here and you can trim some of that extra off. So especially if there's an area that's catching some funny edges, just take a scissors and trim it. Now, important. Make sure you put the sticker on first. And you know what? Sometimes that happens, but that is not the end of the world. What matters is what's down here, right? Just don't cut into that edge at all. So just a little option. You know, if you're someone that likes your stamp super pretty, this might bother you. I'm all about functionality. So if you're catching edges with these, that's one way to help that. Now, speaking of scissors, let me show you something else that I like to do with my stamps. I actually have a couple examples for you. So this stamp set is actually one ginormous stamp. It's that big. Well, when I've used this, I like just one butterfly at a time. Maybe I like that one or that one or that one. So what I did is I used my scissors, and you'll see here where I cut this one off. Now, whenever I do this, because I'll do it quite often, I make sure I do somewhat of a, it doesn't necessarily have to be straight, but when I cut it, I never trim any more off of this. Does that make sense? I wouldn't now come around and trim this because I want to very easily put it back together. So if I wanted to stamp this as one big stamp, I could put it on my block, put that there, tuck that in there, put that there. You would never, ever know that I cut it apart. But now if I want to use this by itself, I'm good to go. Again, if you're using the labels on the back, make sure before you cut any stamps apart, you put those labels on too, because otherwise it would be nearly impossible to now, you know, cut your labels and try to get them on there. So that's one thing I like to do. With this one, this is another good example. This stamp right here, thank you for all that you are. Now, I love this thank you. I love the font that's on there. So sometimes I just want to use the thank you. So I did the exact same thing. You can see how these go together. And again, tendency would be to cut off that little thing. I didn't, because here, if I want to use it as a whole, I can put it on there and then stick this one on right there, put it together. Now when I stamp that, it's going to stamp exactly like it was one stamp and I never cut it apart. So that is just another way to sometimes get a little more mileage out of your stamps. I've had stamps before that might have like an image with words underneath, and I want just the words or just the image. So it works really good just to trim them down. And this one you can see I did put the label on. So I put the label on and then I cut it apart. So that is that one. So let's talk about cleaning our stamps. My favorite way is to clean them with what's called the simple chamois. Now, believe it or not, this thing's clean. It's stained. Actually, this is a pretty new one. Doesn't look too bad. But it is a chamois. You should all know what that chamois are. I mean, I remember using them, my dad using them all the time for washing his car or drying his car. So I just take this under my sink, I get it wet, and I squeeze it out really good. I mean, this is just barely damp. And after I've been using it for a while, I'll go and I'll rinse it under the water and squeeze it and rinse it and squeeze it and rinse it and squeeze it until that water runs clear. Then you know it's clean. So after I've used my stamp, I can just take this and rub it off because it's so, you know, just damp. It's not going to leave a lot of water on there, and it just cleans really, really nice. It's my favorite. Now, this is a stamp case. You can actually buy these. I think they come in a pack of 3, but it works really good to keep it in for when it's sitting on your desk so it doesn't get any paper wet. If you stamp a lot, you can actually close this up in between stamping, and when you come back, it'll still be wet. If you ever have issues with these getting moldy because you've left it in here, then I wouldn't leave it in there. It all has to do with your climate, your humidity, and how long it's in there. So I personally have never had a problem, but I've heard of that. So the other thing you can do is when you're done, let it dry out. It's going to get really hard and it might kind of curl and look pretty funky, but that's okay. It's like so hard you can almost knock on it. But then you just take it, you run it underwater until it gets soft and pliable, and you are good to go. So that's one way to clean them. Now there's a couple other ways. This is the Stampin Scrub pad. Now, when you open this up, you'll notice there's two sides, and it's called a scrub because it's kind of a scrubby little pad on both sides. Some people prefer this. I rarely use this one. I'm a chamois girl. But what you do with this, on one side, you're going to take the Stampin' Mist and you're just going to spray it. And then on the other side is where you're going to dry it. So after I've used this, I'm going to rub it over here on that little damp side with the Stampin' Mist, then come over here and dry. So it's wash, dry, and you can clean your stamps that way. So that's just another option. Now, we're going to do a whole video talking about ink. And when we do, I'll remind you about the Stay-On cleaner, because Stay-On is a permanent ink. And if you use that, you are going to want to clean your stamps with the Stay-On cleaner. That's pretty important because that's the only way to really get that ink off. So we'll mention that when we get to that. But any other inks, chamois or Stampin' Scrub. Now I have to throw this in here because I know my friend Jamie is watching me. You know, there's really no right or wrong way. I know some people like to use baby wipes. Just be careful that they don't leave lint, because that happens sometimes, or wet paper towel, or you do whatever works best for you. What I have found that I tend to do a lot, I don't have water down in my stamp room, which is in the basement. So if this dries out, sometimes I'm too lazy to go get it wet. So I will quite often just take my Stampin' Mist and I'll just spray it right on my stamp. And then I have this very old towel, and I'm almost ashamed to show this to you. It says Stamp It Up on it, all the holes. This I got probably 25 years ago, but it just sits down on my desk. So I spray them and then I wipe them off. And then when this gets where it's not really cleaning them very good anymore, I throw it in my washing machine. So that's just, you know, an old rag with your Stampin' Mist. You know, the most important thing, I think, is that you're in a good habit of cleaning your stamps when you're done using them. Because if you don't, let's say we stamp this in red ink, and then we put it in the case and we put it away, and we come back next time and we want to make a yellow flower and we stamp on our yellow pad, we're going to have that red on there, and your pad's going to get yucky and your image isn't going to look nice. So just get into a really good habit of always cleaning your stamps. Well, there you go. You should know everything about the different types of stamps now and how to clean them. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you, whether you are brand new or if you've been stamping for a long time. Hopefully you picked up a tip or two. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to bring you the next one in this series of all the different parts and pieces that go into card making. That one is going to be all about, I think, inks will be up next. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. And I will be back next time with a YouTube Live sharing some fun projects with you. Make sure you check my video description of this video right down there, depending on your device. And there'll be a link. It'll take you to my website. And over there, if you'd like a Stampin' Up! Catalog, you can request one. I'll have more information about what I shared today with you. And you can contact me over there or leave me a comment. I am here to answer your questions. Please ask. I love to help you in any way that I can. So I'll be stamping again with you real soon. Have a stamp happy day.